You've seen the headlines. You've felt the gut punch moments of what's happening in this country. You've watched things that should never be normalized become daily occurrences. And if you're here, I'm betting that somewhere inside you, there's a voice that keeps whispering, or maybe shouting, I have to do something. But you don't want to react. And if you're anything like me, it means you're watching what's happening here and thinking all the time, this is not acceptable. But here's the thing. We don't just want to react in real time on the basis of our outrage or our anger. We actually really need to build something that lasts. And maybe you just don't know how to begin. That's what this video is for. Because here's what I know. Movements don't start with people who have it all figured out. They start with people who feel the call to change things and decide to answer that call. Today, I'm going to show you how to start and build a movement in your own backyard. Not a someday far off kind of movement, but something that begins with the connections, the skills, and the knowledge that you already have. I'll give you 5 clear steps. I'll give you some examples throughout this video of people who have actually done it right, and I'll remind you all the way through. You're not too small, you're not too late, and you are right on time. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin. I'm a lifelong activist, a former human rights and Wall Street attorney, and now a leadership and impact consultant helping to guide people just like you to make the impact that they are here to make. Every week on this channel, we drop videos to inspire and challenge you to rise to this moment to create the change that we all need toward a better future in this country and around the world. So make sure you hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up so you don't miss another recording. And also, if you're an emerging or new activist and you want to learn how you can make a difference right now, join us starting November 1st, 2025 in our new program, Power Lab. Power Lab is a 7-week course for emerging organizers to overcome outrage and build community action in this time. Registration is open now and class begins on November 1st. If you want to join us, just click the link below and register today. And now, let's get to it. Step 1. Start with what breaks your heart. Let's get one thing straight right up front when it comes to building movements. You don't need a mission statement right away, and you don't even need a strategic plan. You don't need a perfectly packaged movement name or a branded logo. You just need a starting point. And here's where we begin. What breaks your heart? Not in an abstract way, but in a real specific, I saw this happen last week and it ruined me kind of way. Is it your local school board banning the pride flag in classrooms? Is it families in your neighborhood who are afraid to call 911 in an emergency because they're afraid of an ice sweep? Is it the housing crisis or watching people in your neighborhood struggle to be fed? Movements don't start with bullet points. They start with the events of injustice that become too disturbing for any one of us to ignore. So I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself some hard questions, because these questions will lead you to the movement that you are meant to build. What have I seen that I cannot unsee? What injustice makes me think I can't keep pretending that this is okay? Because that's the beginning. That's the doorway. And from there, you need to ask yourself a second question. What's calling to me right now? Not in some grand destiny etched in the stars kind of way. I mean, what's tugging at your sleeves, maybe whispering to you when you're awake in the middle of the night, do something, even if it's small. You can't let this slide. Maybe the thing that's calling to you is organizing at your kid's school. Maybe it's writing flyers or a zine and passing them out in your neighborhood and at local coffee shops. Maybe it's setting up a table at your farmer's market with a voter registration form. Maybe it's just gathering a few people in your living room and asking the question, what are we going to do about this? I'll give you an example. I work with an artist in Portland who has wondered for a very long time how her creativity could make a mark. She's been so upset about what's happening with ICE raids where she lives that she decided to do a postcard campaign where she put her artwork on the front of a postcard and on the back of it put a list of rights for people to understand and internalize when it comes to their potential encounters with ICE. She didn't start a nonprofit and she didn't brand a movement. She simply pulled out her paintings and put them to work in furtherance of justice. This is how movements start. from what hurts, from what calls, from the consequences of doing nothing. And if all you take from this video is getting clear on your heartbreak and on what's calling to you to create change, that's enough, because that's a spark. And from there, we build. Step 2, gather your crew. So once you've found your heartbreak, you're not going to go it alone. You don't need hundreds of people, but you do need, let's say, 3 to 5. And believe it or not, that's it. That's enough to truly start a movement and to really build something significant. When you're looking for your crew, what you want is people who share your values, people who complement your skills, and people who are willing to show up even when the going gets hard. Start with people that you already know, or maybe with kindred spirits who you've met online. Ask those folks, would you want to talk about doing something together on this issue? I don't have it all figured out, but I know I want to make a difference. And then hold a potluck or start a group chat or open a Zoom. This is about becoming the right people moving in the right direction together. Another example of this, I work with some people in Virginia who got very concerned about what ICE was doing where they lived. And so they started a group chat. And from there, they built a rapid response network. They got trained in bystander intervention, and they started doing immediate response work to people who were afraid that maybe an ICE van was sitting in their front yard or an ICE raid was taking place at their local Home Depot. And they have learned now how to document effectively exactly what is happening to raise awareness, to bring more people to the work, and to protect their neighbors. All of this began with a text chain. And the lesson from this is that your people are closer than you think. Ask, invite, and begin. Step 3, pick a strategy that matches your bandwidth. So here's the part where we have to talk about how perfectionism can kill your momentum. You don't need to do everything in your own neighborhood, in your own community, or across the nation. You don't even need to do everything on the thing that breaks your heart. You just need to do something strategic. You want to choose one initial tactic that meets these 3 criteria. It aligns with your heartbreak and your vision. It's doable with the time, the energy, and the people that you have, and it builds momentum, not just attention. And I want to remind you all here that what we're not after is burnout, because doing too much or doing it ineffectively can actually ruin movements before they even begin. This is one reason why making strategic choices at this stage of your movement building is so key. And I also just have to point out that what we're not after at this stage, or ever, if I'm being honest about it, is performative activism. We are looking for strategies that are likely to actually work. You're not doing this work for social media cred. You're not doing this work for likes. And in fact, as I have said many times here on this channel, the most effective movements out there are often ones you've never heard of online. So be thoughtful about your decision making here. Be careful and strategic about your first step. And now I'm going to give you a couple of options to choose from to make your decision making easier. The first bucket is visibility and culture work. This means creating signs, doing art drops. Public storytelling is another example of this. Writing postcards or creating them, like our client in Portland did. Maybe social campaigns that pull people together over creative works. This can also include things like teach-ins, storytelling, and living room gatherings. These strategies shift culture, but more importantly, they also build belonging. Because one of the things about movement building is that people need something they can identify with. They need places right now desperately where they know they belong and are seen. So this can be one strategy as an option that does exactly that. Another option for your action is systemic disruption and building local power. What this looks like is attending city council meetings, maybe going to your school board and advocating for a policy change. It can also include protesting, rallies. It can also include running for office, calling out corruption, and active disruption of, for instance, ICE in your neighborhood. These actions change decisions, policy, and votes. A third option, and one of my favorites, is mutual aid and community resilience. Mutual aid is fundamental to creating change in the era that we live in right now. So many people are suffering and desperate, and that includes where you live. Mutual aid networks that help people to provide resources to one another, whether those resources are financial, physical, or emotional, are a direct resistance to the forces of power in this country right now that want us separated, isolated, and alone. Supporting immigrant families by doing grocery store runs or picking up prescriptions is one primary example of mutual aid. Helping to feed those who are food insecure in your neighborhood is another, whether that's by starting a community garden or by volunteering at your local food bank. Providing rides to people who need access to services but maybe are homebound or disabled is yet another example. All of these actions meet and build trust. And one of the things that we need desperately in this era is trusted networks of safety, security, and survival. When you're choosing between these options, here are some good questions to ask yourself. What do we as a group have access to? What are the skills that we bring to this work? What needs are most urgent to us and those in our community? If you answer these questions effectively, your next step will become obvious. Here's another example. We work with a client in Texas who was very concerned about the fact that voter registration and mobilization where she lived was really on the downturn. Rather than fall prey to concerns about corruption and gerrymandering in her own state, she decided to essentially take over the democratic organizing mechanisms in her city. And now, just from that pull to create something where she lived with the resources and the people that she had, they now are volunteering as precinct captains, mobilizing voter registration for every single election, and moving the needle in ways that meet their bandwidth that actually are creating the possibility of change. One big lesson from this that is really significant at this step: you don't have to yell louder, and you don't have to be big. You just simply have to choose the smart, strategic actions that are going to move the needle. Pick one move and make it matter. Step 4, build infrastructure so you don't burn out. So one of the ways in which movements collapse, or sometimes stop before they even get started, is that they're dependent on only one person's energy and motivation. So one of the things that you do need shortly after you decide what you're doing is some form of basic infrastructure with you and your people. That's not bureaucracy and it's not hierarchy. It's actually just clarity of roles and responsibilities. So here are some things that I recommend to keep your movement growing and headed in the right direction. You need to set a weekly or a bi-weekly meeting time, and that needs to be kept religiously. You need a shared document, maybe not at the start, but shortly after you get going, that identifies your mission and your clear standards for change. This can simply be a statement of 3 values that you care about deeply that are identified with the work that you're trying to do, but they should be agreed upon by everybody who's in your group. Next, you need a small onboarding 1-page document. This is really a way to allow people who find you to start to get involved. And it can be as simple as a document that says, here's what we do and here's how you can join us, with a list of suggestions or a list of needs to keep your movement growing. And then lastly, you need some kind of shared communication space. In this day and age, because of concerns about digital security, I honestly recommend that when you start out, you do this on encrypted text messaging over Signal. That is one way of making sure that your communications are protected. It's one way of making sure that only the people that you want involved have access to those communications. And frankly, it also protects you from things like surveillance, which are more and more omnipresent in this era. One key warning here: please do not organize your movement on social media platforms that have sworn allegiance to the current administration. Every single statement that you make inside a Facebook group, even if it's designated as private, or every single private message that you might send over X, is likely to be the subject of surveillance and data scraping. So please take the initial steps of building out your communications on a platform that you know is secure. And when you get bigger, you might want to consider moving to a platform like Slack. But to begin with, a simple text messaging thread on an encrypted platform like Signal is really all you need. Setting up this basic infrastructure that I've described here allows your movement to continue even when you need to take breaks. It's an endemic necessity to prevent burnout. It means that if you need to take a few days off, or you have a sick kid, or something happens where you can't attend an event that you've planned, others will know how to pick up the slack. And further, it builds out shared models of leadership that also will stop a single person from having to take it all on at once. Another example here is a client that we work with in the greater Chicago area. She knew that she wanted to start a small group that endorsed local progressive candidates and worked to get them elected. This small group of women came together in a living room. They didn't start out with a big vision, but they did almost immediately set up a structure for how they would work together. And they have since become an incredibly reliable source of support and endorsement for progressive candidates running for office in that state. They've done it by setting up this basic infrastructure that allows them to be reached, to share responsibility, and to do the work that they were inspired to do without burning out. Movements that start small still need to be built to last. And I want to invite you to think of the movement that you're building like a garden. And you don't just plant seeds and walk away. You need a schedule for when you're going to water your garden. You need trellises to make sure your plants don't fall over. And eventually, when your garden gets big enough, you're going to need to invite others in to help support that growth. This is what good movement infrastructure does. It helps your movement grow roots. Step 5, make your movement visible and multiply your impact. This final step is the one that most people forget, and it's really critical. You need to share what you're doing and continuously invite others to join you. And you're not doing this because you need a following, but rather because movements grow through visibility and invitation. Let people see your maybe messy living room meetings and your street corner protests that may start with just a couple of people. Let people see your voter registration drives and the work that you're doing to feed your neighbors. And once you get going, post that photo, share your why, and celebrate your wins. But most importantly, always include your next call to action. We meet Thursdays at 7. DM me for a link. We're fundraising for mutual aid. Every dollar counts. Here's how you can donate. These small invitations over time build community and build movements. Another example here is that we have worked with somebody who built out a series of community gardens where he lives on the East Coast. He did this by one event after another, 2 events a month. And at every event, there was another call to action. Next week, we're coming together to plant seeds. Next week, we're coming together to build raised beds. Next week, we're gathering on a Friday night for a cookout and community. Every single action built for the next one. This, my friends, is how ripples turn into waves. Because I'll let you in on a little secret. The most effective movements for social change in our history have started in living rooms and student centers and church basements and neighborhood gatherings. This is how the work begins, and this is how you grow it. So let's review. What's the most effective way to start a movement right now? First, begin with what breaks your heart. Second, gather your crew. Third, choose one clear strategic tactic to start. Fourth, build just enough basic structure to make it sustainable. And 5, share your work, invite others, and let it grow. Here's what I want to remind you of. You don't need a huge platform. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to go viral. And you don't need to aim for the stars right now. You just need to begin. Because here's the truth. This nation will be changed and redeemed by ordinary people who stop waiting for change to come and actually start to create it themselves. You are not too small. You are not too late. You are right on time. And this work doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be done with courage, with heart, and with one another. If you're interested in learning more about how we at the Ripple Effect Institute work with movement builders every day of the week, I want to invite you to book a free course consultation to learn more about how we might be able to help you. We'll walk beside you, we'll train you, and we'll back you up. And we'll do it all in a nationwide community of progressive change agents sharing the same values on the same pathway for change. Because the vision of the future we all want needs more than hope. It needs action, it needs strategy, it needs community, and it's a future that's worth fighting for. The time is now, and that future is calling us. So let's get to work. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.